So in this video, we're going to revisit Sword and Shield booster boxes, and I wanted to talk about my opinions about where the prices are right now and where I see them going towards the end of the year. So Sword and Shield, you'll see with basically every single one of these booster boxes in the past 6 months, there's been two movements price movements upwards for these Sword and Shield booster boxes. Both movements have been pretty big. We had one just recently, but now in like the past month, prices have been pretty stagnant. It was a couple months ago when we saw big Sword and Shield price movements, and then a couple months ago before that, where we saw big price movements. And right now, we are in the in between, which I feel that towards the end of the year, we are going to see another rise with these Sword and Shield booster boxes. Obviously, permitting that this market stays strong, which I believe towards the end of the year, the market's not going to go anywhere. So, with that being the case, I truly believe Sword and Shield booster boxes, seriously, around this time, I don't know when we're going to see another move, but I feel like it is going to be towards the end of the year. This is the point where I like to say, you know, this is like these prices we're seeing right now, they're still good for an investment. But I would say after, when the next movement happens for these Sword and Shield booster boxes, when a lot of these start to enter the 4-digit mark, the $1,000 range, that's where the investability, it's still there, but it diminishes a lot from where booster boxes for Sword and Shield, a lot of them are in the mid to higher hundreds. I feel like at that price point, based on the age of these sets, that's still a, decent, investment point. But once we reach the 4-digit mark, when booster boxes 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, the investability isn't as attractive. Now, we've seen anomalies of that, for example, like Team Up, Evolving Skies, and Fusion Strike just recently hit 1,000. There are some sets where I would say they're an anomaly and possibly they're still pretty good investments. But for a lot of sets, in my opinion, it's just not as attractive, because then you're entering the point of, okay, you're paying 4 digits, 1,000 or above, right, for a booster box. Your market does shrink a bit, and you have to think about, okay, where do I realistically see this going? Because boxes, when they hit those price points, if they're very good sets, they could continue to go up. We saw Evolving Skies, now is at 3K. What was it a year ago, right? We see things, they can move at a fast rate when they're higher priced. But if you're buying a box that's maybe mid-tier or a little bit on the lower tier and you're paying $1,000+, I mean, it's just the investability goes down when you hit that mark. So in my opinion, really buying in the mid to higher hundreds is really sort of, I like to say, the last best opportunity to invest. And there's some really good Sword and Shield sets right now, the booster boxes, that aren't in the 4-digit mark yet. And I truly feel like if you are new, because I've been talking about Sword and Shield literally since I started my channel 2 years ago, but if you are new, because I still get a lot of new people watching these videos, and new people getting into Pokemon investing. Maybe you're new to Pokemon. There's so many people that are new to Pokemon finding this space every single day. If you have not invested into Sword and Shield, I would say between now and whenever the next run up is, which I feel like is the end of the year, this is like the last best opportunity. That's, in my opinion, the best way to put it. A lot of these boxes, like I'm going to show you guys here, any of these really in the mid to high hundreds, I think they're still decent investing price points. First one being Chilling Reign. Now, Chilling Reign is at the pretty much $600 mark. And you can see, like I'm going to show you with all these graphs in the 6-month sort of view, we saw one run up and we saw a second run up just recently. Chilling Reign, I could see, permitting the market is still strong by the end of the year. I could see Chilling Reign by the end of the year. You can call me crazy, but based on what we're seeing here with supply, obviously it's a bit hard to gauge supply and demand, how it's going to be in the next few months or whatever. But I truly believe Chilling Reign by the end of the year could be like an $800-900 booster box. I think that can happen. And Chilling Reign at this price point, $500 to $600, is still pretty attractive. So in my opinion, I think Chilling Reign at this price point in the mid, 3-digit range is still a pretty good investment. Now, Chilling Reign isn't, as high flying, you could say, as some of the other, boxes that were around the same price point. I remember Chilling Reign, Fusion Strike, Lost Origin, they were all about the same price point at one point. And Chilling Reign has fallen behind those two boxes, but Chilling Reign still is a pretty deep set. It has a lot of, cards in here that are pretty expensive. And Chilling Reign at mid fives, I see this being one of the better opportunities, even though it's not as high flying as the others. You're getting a slight discount in at mid fives. I think this is a pretty good buy. Now cases are going for a bit of a premium. Let me actually get my phone here so I can do the math for like case premiums. So right now lowest listed is $4,000. You do the math, you divide 4,000 divided by 6, you're paying $667 rounded up. So you're paying about $100 premium on each booster box, which at that point is about a 20% premium. So it's really hard to gauge case premiums because the market is a lot nicher than just loose booster boxes. So 20%, I would say 20% isn't the worst thing ever. There's some cases where the premiums get kind of absurd. 20% isn't terrible. Most recent one sold for $3,600. So at 4K for a case, 20% premium. You just gotta think to yourself, is this case gonna outperform what I could just buy a loose box for? That's up to you, because like I said, the case market is a lot more niche. Now, if you go on eBay, I'm pretty much going to do this for all these boxes, just showing you guys cases, if there's any deals on eBay. For the most part, all the deals, the cheapest ones are on TCG Player. You can see no cases are under $4,000 on eBay. They're all above. They're about $4,500 or above. So your cheapest option is going to be TCG Player. Now next here, Evolving Skies, you can see in the past 6 months, it's unlike the other boxes, because Evolving Skies is the anomaly. Past 6 months, it's basically doubled in price, and you can see it's just been steadily going up. This box is anywhere between now like close to $3,000, but it ranges from like $2,700 to $3K. So Evolving Skies at this price point in terms of investability, like I said, this is the anomaly. Will this box in maybe a few years be anywhere from 5 to 10 grand? I know it's a huge range, but when you get higher in the price points, there's bigger price jumps. It's possible, but you do gotta understand, if you're selling at a box that's 5-10 grand, think about where you want to sell this, how you're going to sell it, and that is something to take in consideration. But Evolving Skies, I feel like, will be somewhat liquid in all markets and all price points. So at this price, I literally said it when this box was $700. Even I think I said recently when it was like $2,000. I think until it gets to the very, very high thousands and enters like the 5-digit range, I would say it's not a bad investment. So yes, even at $2,500 to $3,000, it is not a bad investment, because I think in a couple of years, you could probably double your money. So in that way, it's not that bad of an investment, but liquidity, all those sorts of things, you got to think about where we're going to sell this, is up for consideration. Now cases, right now lowest listed is $20,000. Now when you actually do the math on that, the premium is, not actually extremely big, even though, you break down the numbers, it's about like a $500 premium per booster box. But when you actually do the math, like 500 divided by maybe, let's say, a $2,700 booster box, like kind of like the price we see on TCG Player, that's only about 19% premium. So the numbers seem more crazy because it's thousands, but it's still 20%, just like the other case, the Chilling Reign case I showed you. So percentage wise, it's about the same, but it is a larger amount of money. So that's something for also consideration. Also worth noting, at least on TCG Player, one just resold for $1,500 or $15,000, but that was quite a while ago. So I don't know if we've seen yet one sell for 20K. Now on eBay, there is actually a cheaper case. I did, look at the pictures. This case looks fine, I believe, and they're a reputable seller, so you can get a slight discount if you want. $800 off of lowest listed on TCG Player. So you guys can, if you have 20K to throw around, invest into, a few booster boxes or just one case, you can maybe look into that. Next here, Fusion Strike. Now, Fusion Strike, I believe, is sort of another anomaly where I would say, if Chilling Reign, for example, were to hit 1,000, I'd say Fusion Strike is a much better investment at that $1,000 mark. So even though this has hit the 4-digit, level, I see Fusion Strike in a few years possibly being 2 to 3 grand. So in that way, $1,000, not a bad investment. It has shown over time that it is just one of the top sets in Sword and Shield because of that Gengar. And I truly believe I easily see this box, honestly, in my opinion, in a couple years being 2-3 grand. So $1,000, it is more of a hefty price than paying $580, $600 for a Chilling Reign box. But I do believe it has still some value there. And you'll see, like with all these other ones, like I'm showing you here, there was a point where it went up and just recently went up. And I think we are at that point now where things, even though it doesn't really show it here, on the past month have started to stagnate a bit, but this has moved up from like 900 to now like the mid 1,100 mark, or like 1,050. So Fusion Strike, even 1,000, I don't think is actually that bad of a buy at this price point. Now, lowest listed case right now on TCG Player is about $7,000. You do the math, you're paying 1,170. So you're paying about only $100 extra per booster box. Percentage-wise, that's only 10%. So you're actually paying less of a premium on this case, and there's multiple sellers here that are selling it for basically the same price. So honestly, a 10% premium on each booster box for a case. If I was gonna buy and I had money, I'd probably buy the case. If you're only paying 10% more, which is like $100 more per booster box, that's not a big deal. In my opinion, that difference is negligible, so I would probably buy the case because you're not paying that much more. But that's the lowest listed. Most recent one sold for $6,500. Now on eBay, they're more expensive, so your best bet is going to be on TCG Player. Now moving on, Brilliant Stars, you can see in the past 6 months, you can see all the same movements here. Brilliant Stars right now, I believe, is about $600. Brilliant Stars, in my opinion, it's sort of a toss-up with Chilling Reign. Personally, it's really hard to say because Chilling Reign is a deeper set than Brilliant, but Brilliant has a, in my opinion, more appealing aspect to it, having the Charizard, Altar, and the evolutions in the trainer gallery. So it's really hard to say between Chilling and Brilliant what I would pick. Biasedly, I'd pick Brilliant, but Chilling is more of a deep set, so it is a bit of a toss-up there. So Brilliant at 600, I easily see this being like, in my opinion, close to probably $1,000 booster box, just like Chilling at the end of the year. I feel like the Charizard, I don't know how expensive it is now, but at one point it was in the under $200. I see Brilliant Stars having a pretty good future. Just those evolutions in that Charizard is just, in my opinion, makes a perfect set, but it's not as deep. So, but Brilliant, I think in 600 is still pretty good of a buy. Now cases right now, lowest listed is 3,700. So we do the math on that, 3,700 divided by 6, you're paying $616. Honestly, that's like no premium because lowest listed was basically $600 on TCG Player. You're paying a $16 premium on each booster box, which if you do the math percentage-wise, that's what, like, not even 5%, it's like a few percent. I'd probably buy the case. If I were you, if you had the money, I'd probably go with the case because you're not really paying much of a premium at all. Now on eBay, same thing as the other ones, not any cheaper. Now Astral Radiance, I mean, out of all the boxes here, Astral's not my favorite. I'd pick many other boxes over Astral, to be honest, even though this is the cheapest one that I'm showing you. Astral, it's the weird thing with Astral, it never got a big reprint like some of these other ones like Lost Origin or Silver, yet it's underperformed every other one because the demand simply is not as strong. And you are getting a discount. I mean, Astral's not a bad set, has the Starmie, has the Machamp, but the set isn't as sought after as the other ones. And personally, in my opinion, like I said, I'd go after the more expensive boxes rather than Astral, even though it is on the cheaper side in the mid fours. But I mean, Astral the mid fours is very cheap, but honestly, there's a reason for that. So Astral is kind of a whatever pick in my opinion at mid fours. It's, I guess, safe, but still, I just don't. It's not as high flying as for me to be worth to just have a discount of, let's say, picking this over like Brilliant Stars or something like that. I'd rather spend another $150 and buy a Brilliant Stars or Chilling Reign box than Astral Radiance. Now the case, if you see here, lowest listed is $33.50. You do the math on that, you're actually paying quite a bit of a premium, about $100 premium per booster box at this point for Astral. This case being this much of a premium, I would probably not buy this, just in my opinion. Astral's not as popular, and you're paying that much of a case premium. To me, that's not really worth it. On eBay, there was a case that was actually a bit cheaper, but it's from Canada. I saw it had like a ripped label on the side of the box. So I don't know if that matters to you guys, but you can get it a little bit cheaper from Canada. Now, Lost Origin. In my opinion, out of all these booster boxes that you see, Lost Origin is probably, being biased because I just see Lost Origin in the future, is probably one of the best buys here. Believe it or not, in my opinion. It's $200 more than Chilling Reign and Brilliant. It's $200 cheaper than Fusion Strike. This is sort of the high middle ground, in my opinion, where Lost Origin, I really feel like the only reason why it's not in the 1,000 yet, it did get that big reprint with Silver Tempest, and that's the only reason why I believe it's any less cheaper, or any cheaper than the other boxes like Fusion. Lost Origin, I easily see this being 1,000 plus by the end of the year. and I feel like this has a very bright future. That Giratina card and the artist, everyone knows, you know, it's, in my opinion, at 800, a pretty good buy. I know I sound crazy saying that for an $800 booster box, but I feel like in the future this is going to be pretty close to Fusion Strike. In my opinion, it might still always be a little bit under Fusion because Fusion has that Gengar, but I think Lost Origin definitely is a one of my top picks, pretty much my top pick out of all these booster boxes. The $800 price range to me is pretty attractive. If you have not obviously already invested in a Sword and Shield, I think this is one of the better buys on the market right now. Now for cases, they're going for $5,900. Let me do the math on that. It's almost $1,000 at that point. You're paying $983, so you're paying about a almost $200 premium, which is about 25%. That's a pretty big premium. So that's one of those things you'll have to think to yourself, it's worth paying that premium. It's up to you. But even just a loose box, I think is a perfectly fine investment. Now for cases, not really any cheaper on eBay. Now lastly, Silver Tempest has recently made a move to basically almost $500. You can see if we go past these like lower tier sellers, it's basically a $500 booster box. Silver Tempest for a while was pretty cheap. It was in the mid threes. Now it's at 500. You could argue Silver Tempest is still somewhat undervalued at 500 considering the Lugia. I think Lugia has a huge long-term potential. Lugia, for what was it, Neo Genesis, like during the whole 2021 boom was a huge thing. Hey, maybe if there's another, once this market, whenever maybe things go back a little bit more normalized, and if we have another huge boom at some point in the future, I feel like Silver Tempest, when it gets to that age, being pretty much older, I think Silver Tempest is going to be pretty big because like Lugia, that's just my opinion though, but it also has the Rayquaza in the trainer gallery. Silver Tempest at that price point, then if I based on that, I think it's still pretty good buy. But you could argue maybe Brilliant Stars if you pay another $100, maybe that's a better buy, or Chilling Reign. But Silver Tempest, the Lugia, I think is still gonna have, it has great long-term potential in my opinion, and therefore $500, I still think it's not even $1,000. I think 500 is actually still pretty good. Now cases are going for about $4,000, so I think this one has a pretty big premium. 4,000 divided by 6, you're paying $666, $150 premium per booster box, which is like 30%. That's pretty big. So there, maybe you just want to go for the loose box because you're saving a decent chunk. But once again, it's up to you. Same thing with pretty much all these cases. It's not any cheaper on eBay. In fact, you can see there's a live auction. Pretty much going for lowest listed on TCG Player. It's from Probstein. So that's all I want to show you guys here. In my opinion, looking at Sword and Shield in the market recently, it's been a little bit more calmer in the past like month. I think we're gonna have another run up at the end of the year. And like I said, just to reiterate, I think we are at that point where this is the last chance of a very good opportunity before these boxes inevitably, in my opinion, especially in the beginning of next year, I think a lot of these will probably be in that 4-digit mark, and therefore the investability potential and sort of, you could say, the risk or whatever of like maybe it's just stagnating, it goes up once it reaches that point. But depending how long this market stays strong for, even paying $1,000 for some of these booster boxes probably is not that bad if you had to buy at that price point in the future. But when these are in the mid to high hundreds, I really, especially this market, how I see it going, I see this being sort of the last best chance. So that's all I want to say in this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.